Semla are a Swedish cardamom-scented bun filled with almond paste and cream, and they're a Lenten tradition that Swedes wait all year to eat. They are actually, in fact, a bit infamous. There's rumors that a king ate himself into gluttony and finished off his meal with a semla. He ended up dying that very night. Coincidence or culinary scandal? Why not make these royal-worthy buns and decide for yourself? Let me show you how. For the Tangzhong, add 20 grams of strong white bread flour, that's 2.5 tablespoons, to a small pan. Then add in 60 grams, a quarter cup of whole milk, and 60 grams, a quarter cup of water. Start whisking and turn that onto medium-high heat. Make sure you whisk into all of the little edges of the pot so that you don't miss any flour. What we're really looking for is for it to be thick enough that bubbles start to come up to the surface. So stop whisking every now and again just to check if they're coming up. That's exactly what we're looking for. Let's get it off the heat. Tangzhong is a method traditionally used in Japanese baking, and it keeps your bun really soft for a longer period of time. It's almost like adding preservatives without all the chemicals. Spread your Tangzhong out onto a plate. This allows for it to cool more quickly and evenly. Now cover it with cling film so that it doesn't get a skin on top. Try and push all of those air bubbles out. Now set that aside to cool. I have about 20-25 green cardamom seeds here. I'm going to grind my cardamom fresh, but you could just use a teaspoon of regular dried cardamom. And I'm just going to get the little bits of cardamom out of the pod. You might need to smack it on your counter to do that. And get all of those little pods out. You need about a teaspoon of cardamom, and that usually pans out to about 10 to 15 pods.
And now I'm just going to grind that up in my mortar and pestle.
If you don't have a mortar and pestle and you don't want to grind your own cardamom, you can just use pre-ground. It just has a bit more boost of flavor when you do it from fresh. If you do have any large bits left in your cardamom, you might just want to pass it through a sieve to make sure you've got no chunky bits going in your buns. To a large mixing bowl, add 500 grams, 4 cups, and 2 tablespoons of strong white bread flour, 50 grams, a quarter cup of castor or superfine sugar, your teaspoon of cardamom, and a quarter teaspoon, about 2 grams of salt. If you're using dry yeast, add in 8 grams to your flour mix.
Then add in your cooled Tangzhong.
Fit your mixer with a dough hook. Add in 235 milliliters or 1 cup of whole milk and start mixing on a low speed. Once it starts to come together, add in 1 large egg. Now slowly incorporate 50 grams, 3.5 tablespoons of butter that's at room temperature. I've cut mine into small pieces so that it easily incorporates into the dough. Once the butter has been mixed in, let it knead for about 5 to 6 minutes on a low speed.
Lightly butter a pan with a lid. This will ensure your dough doesn't stick as it's rising.
After 6 minutes, your dough should be really silky and smooth. If it's still sticking to the side of the bowl, add in another tablespoon of flour just to thicken it up that little bit. The butter has all been incorporated and it's really silky soft. It's a little bit sticky, but it doesn't really stick. Now transfer your dough to your lightly buttered container. Cover it up and let it rest in the refrigerator overnight. And into the fridge. You could just let this prove until it's doubled in size and go ahead and start making your buns. But it will have a much deeper, complex flavor if you let it rest overnight in the refrigerator. Our dough has cold proved for 20 hours. And you can see, even in the cold, it's grown so much. We're going to knock this back and form it into our little balls. Oh, that's the best part. This step is optional, but I've weighed my dough and I've divided it by 12. I'm going to weigh out each piece of dough so that my buns are the perfect size. My dough weighs 975 grams, so I need 81 grams for each bun. But you can just eyeball it if you don't want them to be absolutely precise. So when I'm rolling out my buns, I like to press the dough down and take the edges and pull them into the center. This just helps a little bit with the structure and tension of the dough. And then once I've got those edges pulled in, I flip it over and I use the stickiness of the dough to help give some tension as I pull across the work surface. You can see it's creating tension on the top of the bun, and that's going to cause spring in the oven, which makes our buns rise up nicely. If your dough is a little bit too sticky, you can very lightly flour your work surface, but don't flour it too much or you won't be able to get this tension. Because this dough is cold from the refrigerator, it's a lot easier to work with than one that's been proved out in the warm air. And then I'm just going to pop that on a parchment lined baking tray. Now that your buns are rolled out, these will need to prove for 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the temperature of your kitchen. If it's very cold where you live, you may want to pop the tray in the oven switched off with a bowl of boiling water. The steam and heat from the water will help them prove a little bit quicker. Preheat your oven to 220 degrees Celsius or 425 degrees Fahrenheit. If you have a convection oven, you can do 200 degrees Celsius or 400 degrees Fahrenheit. My buns have risen up and we need to wash them with an egg wash.
Crack an egg into a bowl and whisk it until the yolk and white are homogeneous. Using a pastry brush, brush your egg on top of each bun. I have done this quite successfully with my fingers when I couldn't find my pastry brush. That egg wash is going to make the buns so glossy. Let's get them in the oven.
These will need to bake for 8 to 10 minutes until they're beautifully golden brown and the internal temperature reads 95 degrees Celsius or 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Measuring the temperature of the inside of your bakes is the perfect way to know they're accurately finished.
Pop your hot buns onto a cooling rack and let them cool completely before filling.
You can freeze these buns unfilled for up to 3 months, so feel free to make them in advance. You could go out and buy almond paste, but I'm going to show you how to make it from scratch. To a food processor, add 200 grams, 2 cups of skinned almonds. If you haven't got a food processor, you could use ground almonds or almond flour. It just might not have quite as fresh a taste. Now pulse these until they come into a coarse, sandy crumb. Any more than that and you'll get almond butter. We want a little bit of texture in this. This is the consistency you're looking for. You can see we have no large chunks of almond, but there still are some little coarse bits in there for that texture. To a bowl, add your coarsely ground almonds, and then sift in 100 grams, 3/4 cups plus 2 tablespoons of icing or powdered sugar. I live in a very humid environment, so mine always gets lumpy and I make sure to sift it every time. Give that a mix. Then add in 2 grams, half a teaspoon of almond extract, 1 egg white. If you are making your almond paste from scratch, don't use a whole egg to glaze your buns. Just use the yolk, and that way you can use the whites for the almond paste and the yolk for the glaze. No wastage. And about a teaspoon, 15 milliliters of water. Now let's mix that all together. If you want this to be pipeable, say to put into an almond croissant, you can add a little bit more water to it. Or blending the entire thing in the food processor will make the paste a lot smoother.
This is the consistency you're looking for. You could use this straight away, but I like to grate mine up into fine little pieces, so I'm going to pop it in the refrigerator to firm up.
Pop it onto some cling film and then use the cling film to form it into a log and into the fridge. I find the easiest way to use your almond paste once it's been chilled is to grate it. It will defrost or soften up faster and you can use it in whatever recipe you need it for. And if you get pieces that break off, again, just break them up with your hands. We're just looking for smaller pieces of the almond paste.
For this recipe, I need 200 grams, around 7 ounces, or about a cup of the grated almond paste.
And any leftover almond paste can be wrapped up and stored in the freezer for 3 months. You'll want to cut a wedge out of the top of your semla. This is the traditional way. So cut a little sort of triangle in the top, and then we're going to pry that bit out. Doesn't that look amazing? And then we're going to take the bit of filling from the top so that this gets nice and flat, but we're also going to scoop out some of the filling from the bun. You could use a knife to pull out the filling. Just be careful not to cut through the bottom of the bun. These are going to make up some of that almond paste that's filling the bun afterwards. If you're not comfortable with cutting the triangle shape, you could just cut a piece off the top, just straight across. If you have large pieces of bun in your bowl, you want to break them up into little crumbs. This way they break down with the milk and almond paste a little bit easier. You can really smell the cardamom. Now that our crumbs are all crummy, add in your almond paste. You need 200 grams, 7 ounces, or about a cup of grated almond paste. Then sift in 1 tablespoon, around 10 grams of icing sugar. Add in 150 milliliters, around 2/3 a cup of whole milk. Now give that a good mix.
Really smash in that almond paste so that it mixes up nicely with the breadcrumbs. This is why I find grating the almond paste easier. It really does incorporate better. You're looking for this sort of oatmeal-y consistency. You can see that all of the breadcrumbs and almond paste have come together and there are no little lumps of either in the mixture.
This bit is optional, but I like a little bit of jam in the bottom of my semlor. So I'm just going to add about a teaspoon in the bottom. And I'll just do jam in half because I'm going to share these with some friends. With the back of your spoon, just spread the jam all along the bottom of your bun. Add a nice spoonful of the almond paste mixture into each bun. I like to start with 1 spoonful each, and then I come back and fill them up a little bit more. You don't want to fill them completely to the top so they're overflowing, but just so that the filling sort of hits where you've cut that triangular piece out. Set this aside while we prepare our whipped cream.
To your mixing bowl, add 450 milliliters, just under 2 cups of heavy or double cream.
And add in about 4 grams, a teaspoon of vanilla. Optional, but I love the flavor.
And let's whisk that up.
Once the mixture is at slightly soft peaks, sift in 1 tablespoon, around 10 grams of icing sugar.
Then add in half a teaspoon, 2 grams of cream of tartar.
If you're serving these straight away, you don't need to add the cream of tartar, but it does help to stabilize the whipped cream, and you can keep them in the fridge for a few days, if they last that long.
Whisk this to medium firm peaks. You want a little bit of looseness to your cream.
This is the consistency you're looking for. Let's get that into a piping bag. I find the easiest way to fill a piping bag is to use your hand as a scraper. So with a spatula, pick up your cream and then literally just scrape it against your hand with the bag wrapped around it. And then just lift up the sides of the bag and then place your bag down on your countertop, pop the top shut, and using your other hand, press the cream down to the bottom so that you get no air bubbles. You can even squish out the cream a little bit to make sure any of those air bubbles disappear.
I'm using a star tip, but use whatever shape you like.
Add a nice big overflowing swirl of cream on the top. And then pop the top back on the bun. Feel free to increase the cream amount if you really love whipped cream. You'll often find them in bakeries towering with whipped cream, but I do find them a little bit difficult to eat that way. All that's left to do is give them a little dusting of icing sugar. These can traditionally be served in Sweden in a bowl with warm milk poured around it. It absorbs into the bun and it becomes really soft and squidgy, and you eat it with a spoon. But it's equally as great to eat them as they are. If you really want to take your semla to the next level, you have to make my homemade jam. If you like this video, please hit the like button down below, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.